County Charter Commission. Our role is to review the home rule charter, first adopted in 2000 and reviewed in 2011, and now reviewed by commission of 25 Johnson County citizens, who most of whom are around the table with me. We have a couple of our members appearing by Zoom. First thing I want to do, I guess, is thank the KU Edwards campus for offering us this room, allowing us to meet here socially distanced, but this is our first meeting in person. I think it's our 83rd meeting overall. Does it feel like that? About somewhere in the 80s. I think it's actually our 6th full meeting of the commission, as we've been reviewing various levels of county government before we get into the meat of our effort, which is to determine if there are any amendments we want to recommend to the voters of Johnson County to be put on the ballot in November of 2022. When we're pleased to have once again Deputy County Clerk Linda Sater here as our lead staff, along with Maury Thompson and Cynthia Dunham. Linda, would you call the roll, please?
Wendy Bingesser. Mike Bain.
Mr. Bain was going to attend virtually.
Mike Bain, present.
Big voice.
Karen Brownlee. Vicky Charlesworth. Jim Denny. Jane Dirks. Jimmy Gayona. Tedrick House. Randy Hutchins.
Randy Hutchins, present.
Chris Iliff. Chris, you're on mute. He is coming in through Zoom. Chris Iliff.
Here.
Thank you. Laura Klingensmith. Joy Costin. Brent McCune. Eric Michelson. Ed Peterson. Don Rattan. Leslie Riverola.
Leslie had indicated to us that she would probably be able to join about 5 o'clock, virtually, I believe.
Don Roberts.
Don Roberts here.
Kyle Russell.
Kyle Russell, present.
Paula Swak. Brenda Sharp.
Brenda Sharp, present.
Greg Shelton. Greg Smith. Zach Thomas. And Chairman Musel.
Greg Musil here.
So I think we have 24 with one coming in late.
24 present with one coming in late. So we do have a quorum. Again, trying to move through the agenda so we can get to our presenters today. First item is to consider approval of the agenda as published today. It was a 1-pager plus 2 attachments. The second page showing the presentation and meeting schedule we had looked at last meeting. And the third page containing the KU Edwards campus best conference center room rental guest responsibilities, which I know we will all follow. Are there any questions about the agenda? If not, I would accept a motion to approve it as published. Moved by Ms. Costin, seconded by Mr. McCune. Any discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, no. That motion carries without opposition. When we get to comments or questions that are non-routine such as that, we'll ask you to take a microphone, hand it to whoever the speaker is. We're limited on the number of microphones we can have, but so that folks online can hear, we'll need you in a microphone if you want to make comments more than simply a routine motion like that. The second item on the agenda then is consideration and approval of the June 14th, 2021 minutes as previously provided, which I believe was provided on Monday, given the short 9 days between our meetings. Are there any corrections or additions to the minutes? And for those members of the commission online, just unmute and interrupt if you have any questions as we go along. I cannot see you at all, so I have no idea if you're trying to break in. If not, no objection, no additions or corrections, I accept a motion to approve the minutes. Motion by Mr. Michelson. I think I heard somebody second by Mr. Smith. Did I see your hand? Is that all right, Greg? All in favor, say aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
That motion carries without opposition. No old business, new business. I mentioned the KU Edwards room rental guest responsibilities. Please abide by those as a guest of the KU Edwards campus. I left on here the submission of questions for our county commissioners and our former county managers that will be coming up in a month or so. And then I put on there for the first time submission of potential charter amendment topics. In our rules, we have indicated that anybody can submit topics that they would consider, want the commission to consider placing on the November 2022 agenda. We will have initial discussion on that and see if there is a sufficient number to go to a full discussion. I've talked to the executive committee, and what we'd like to do is create some sort of a template that would identify what the topic is and a summary of why you think it's important to discuss. And that way we can have kind of a standard format for receiving those ideas. Based on the schedule, our first public hearing would be around September 13th. We can talk about it. I think we may talk about it at the next meeting, but I'd like to know whether we would like to put out a list of the topics before the first public hearing or leave the first public hearing basically wide open to any thoughts, ideas, constructive criticism, or whatever of the current home rule charter. Any questions about that housekeeping? If not, we will move right into our three meaty presentations for today. The first one will be by the Johnson County Library System. Sean Casserly will lead that. I'm sure he has other members of his team here. We received all of the presentations ahead of time, which we really appreciate from all three presenters. Sean, I think you're over my shoulder, so the floor is yours. The ceiling is yours.
Thanks, Greg. Well, good evening. I'm Sean Casserly, the County Librarian for the Johnson County Library, and I want to thank the Charter Commission for giving me the opportunity to share a little about what the library is doing and how it fits into Johnson County government. Can everyone hear me okay? Okay. First, I'd like to talk about the mission and the vision of our organization. Johnson County Library creates an environment for people to learn, to explore, to enjoy, and to create. Our mission, what we do every day, is that we provide access to ideas, information, and experience and materials that support and enrich people's lives. And that's the central tenet of what we do as far as library service. Johnson County Library is an agency of the Johnson County government. And with KSA 12-1225, the powers and duties of the library board are to make and adopt rules and regulations for the administration of the library. The Johnson County Library is an independent board of directors appointed by the Board of County Commissioners. And their term is 4 years, and they can do 2 consecutive 4-year terms for a total of 8 years before they need to step off the library board. The budget, how the library is funded, is primarily through ad valorem support, mill levies. The library is a separate taxing district, and the annual budget is approved by the library board of directors and the Board of County Commissioners. And what's not stated here, and as written in our policy, is that our library board has a committee, a separate committee that meets 4 times a year. And for that, they rely on the professional staff to talk to them about how we're spending our money, both in personnel and on our facilities and our collection. And that has a level of oversight. Then that committee reports back to the library board for its final approval. And then goes, we work with the county manager's office and the finance office, and they review it. And then finally, it goes to approval for the BOCC, Board of County Commissions. So there's a lot of oversight with that. Includes personnel and personnel review committees, and our comprehensive library master plan, which is our facilities plan. Not only is that approved by the board, but it goes through a county, what they call capital replacement and capital improvement plan committee for their approval and questioning. This pie chart is kind of a breakdown of how we're funded. The green is ad valorem, about 87%. The other taxes are personal property taxes. So it's boats, RVs, other types of recreational vehicles. There are other revenues, which are fines and fees. So if your library book is overdue, and I'm sure none of you have overdue library books, I can tell by looking at you that you're all library members in good standing. But if you do happen to have a library book that's overdue, we will charge you a fine to return it. We also charge for photocopying, and we charge for printing. And so that's where that revenue comes from. Then there's a small percentage, which is in grants, and an even smaller percentage in investments over that 12 months, because we get two payments on the ad valorem over a 12-month period. Why is a board of directors in an independent taxing district important? It's important for the independence of the selection of the materials. It's the goal of the library through our policy to provide materials to the community that express all points of views and ideas. Realizing that some of those ideas may be controversial at times or new ideas, but the library's responsibility is to be a neutral platform where those ideas exist, and the citizens have the ability to get and process that information and draw their own conclusion. That information is also considered confidential, meaning we do not share patrons' reading records, because we believe that every person deserves the right to acquire information without being monitored by an external third party. We do work with law enforcement, and there are times where law enforcement will request information, but by policy, we require either a court order or a subpoena for that. The turnaround time is about 15 minutes from the request to providing that law enforcement officer with that piece of information. And from time to time that occurs. We have a separate information technology department, mainly because we offer about 344 public computers, and we offer Wi-Fi at all of our locations. Again, patrons searching the internet is protected, and that's why we have a separate IT department. Also, the range of services that we offer, technological services, is vast, from online databases to ebooks to online learning. And then the fiduciary responsibility for the library board is there to accept gifts from the community. Where do we line by policy with the county, and how does the library fit into the county government in general? And that's covered in the Kansas Statute 12-1225B, where the library adheres to all policies concerning HR issues. So that would include payroll, all county HR policies, all paid plans and benefits, and with purchasing and financing. So we follow all the rules for competitive bidding, with including RFPs, term and supply. All of that is to endeavor to make the spending of library funds completely transparent to the public. We work with an independent auditor. We'll look at process, how we handle payroll or how we handle money and transactions through credit cards. Over the last 12 to 18 months, we've been working with the county auditor's office, particularly on cybersecurity issues, realizing that because we have so many people from the public connect to our Wi-Fi, that the library could act as a weak point or a weak link in the protection of county assets. And then we work with risk management for insurance and loss control. So again, on an average week pre-COVID, we had about 34,000 people come through our facilities each week. So in the wintertime, we have slips and falls, which is quite normal. But again, to lower the risk of liability, we take a part of the risk management process with county. Where do we align with non-library support, particularly with the county government? We have one existing MOU with county facilities. And when we talk about county facilities, we're talking about two types of functions. The functions of building new buildings and maintaining those buildings, and then the custodial portion of facilities. As librarians, particularly when you're doing capital projects, we're not versed in how to do that, how to fund them, or how to bond them. But we are really great partners with the facilities department, which is very fortunate to have a number of highly qualified architects. And they were able to support and help us reach our outcomes. They're able to control cost, they're able to work with vendors and contractors, they're able to follow best practices, and it has been a great partnership. And if you look at Monticello and the Lenexa City Center, those are two examples where the library has partnered with facilities. And the last year has been more important than ever to partner with facilities with COVID. County facilities have stepped up, provided guidelines on cleaning protocols, on how to create shielding for our staff to protect staff from COVID, also to help us with signage to inform patrons that are entering a building that masks are required. A new partnership which we're exploring is with the Sheriff's Department. And again, this is integral to providing a secure and safe place for the citizens to enter the library. So that recently, the Sheriff has done a security audit of our buildings, looking at where we're placing video, surveillance, entry points, familiarizing both fire departments and local municipal departments for active shooter, creating spaces for us staff to take the public if there is an active shooter, and then weather emergencies, whether it be high wind or whether it be tornadic activity. We're in the process of formalizing this relationship with the Sheriff's Department, and we've converted one of our full-time equivalent positions to actually reside in the Sheriff's Department and have employed a full-time security officer. We're also working with the Sheriff's Department to coordinate all keying of buildings onto one system. So this is the badging systems that we have that allow staff entry, and working with their guidelines to do a two-factor authentication. So not only would you scan to get into the building, but you would enter a PIN code. Just in case you lost your badge, they felt that that was a vulnerability going forward. And that partnership is working very well. One of the concerns of some of the challenges that we face, and it's, I think it's a challenge, but I think I wouldn't recommend any changes, but it's the amount of oversight and the amount of work that we go into working with the county and with our board, presenting these types of information. This often can extend a project out longer than you would be if you were an independent business. But in my personal opinion, I think that oversight brings many points of view and different types of thoughts and possibilities into projects. And that's coming up with the Antioch project that's happening in the city of Miriam, where we're able to partner with the city, share land and create a campus, which I think will benefit the community. It also lowers tax costs to the community because we're doing shared parking. And so we together have created a parking structure that librarians and people that are using the community center will be able to use together. This makes a lot of sense rather than the library creating its own parking lot and the city creating a separate one. And then we work with the city as far as the maintenance goes, very similar to the model that we followed with Lenexa. Other partnerships and participants. So I left on your packet our 2019 annual report. So on page 8, it gives a list of all the partners. One of the things that makes, I think, our library particularly strong is the willingness for outside agencies to partner with us. This goes from schools for summer reading programs to AARP for tax help. I can't go through the list, but as you will see, it's extensive. We're looking for all ways for the community to use the library as a platform and for being a meeting place for the community. One of the things that has been really successful is our legislative coffees, where legislators are able to meet the constituents and talk about the issues. We've also partnered in 2020 with the elections office, particularly with drop-off. Because we have 14 locations around the county, we're able to work with them and pick 3 locations where citizens were able to drop off their election votes. And collaboration and programming with other Johnson County departments. As we went through this year of COVID, again, I think it's just indicative of all the departments and agencies of how we pulled together. Whether it was the continuity of government, we had staff work there as far as the planning, or whether it is with vaccines. We work together to get the outcomes. We may not have had all the resources, or we may have put a hold, but again, I felt that this was another way where library staff worked with other departments and offices to provide the right service to the patrons at the right time. Some of the challenges we face in the future, basically getting the right balance of physical and digital collections. We found an uptick over the last 18 months where people wanted to get their content digitally, but we know for a fact that about 80% of people still prefer to read a physical book. We did discover that people like in-person programming, such as our story times and author visits, but often people have busy schedules and cannot attend those. And what we found is more people attended our programs virtually after that event had happened and went back and watched the recording than actually watched it as we live streamed it. And it's a direction that as we do programming in the future, we'll be continuing to offer hybrid solutions for people who either have busy schedules or actually have mobility issues getting to the library. And this is a challenge for us, but one that we think we can overcome. We continue to provide ways to provide convenience access to our patrons. And so all of our new libraries have drive-through, which seems to be just something that our patrons love. We place our holds at the front of the building, and we plan to continue to offer curbside service. And we plan to continue to implement the comprehensive library master plan. And the next one, as I said before, is Antioch. The last thing I want to talk about is the strategic plan. It's something that we look at every 5 years. We go out and survey the community on its needs, and then we follow up and ask them again, all those needs, what should the library be doing? The 5 areas that we hear resoundingly is education, community building, convenience, communication, and operations. And that's where we focus our funds. I want to thank you for this opportunity, and I'd be happy to answer any of your questions you might have about the library or anything else.
Thank you, Sean. I suspect we have some questions from folks. If you want to raise your hand, get a microphone. Mayor Schwach? I don't know if all those are on or not. Probably not.
The current charter says that the library, because it functions with an independent board, shall adopt the policies of the Board of County Commissioners with regard to certain activities. And you've talked some about that. I'd like to understand in practice what that means. You talked about the more formalized relationship where you have an MOU or you're about to with the sheriff's department. But with regard to personnel and accounting and even your relationship with facilities, does that mean that you have a series of sentences on a piece of paper and then you working with the board decide how that gets implemented, or does it mean something more hands-on? For example, when you have to decide what the benefit package looks like for your employees, are you deciding which insurance carrier, or is the county deciding that? Can you help us understand that relationship?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And so it's a bit of a complicated answer. Let me say this. The library doesn't set its own benefits or insurance policies, but as a member of the executive leadership team that sits on part of with the county and the other executives, we have input onto that. They have a separate actual benefits committee, which I've sat on. And so I'm a participant on that and can talk about my concerns for library staff, but also concerns for county employees in general. So I kind of take off my county librarian hat and put on my county executive hat and think about the entire system. In practical matters and everyday working, that we have a liaison with the HR department. So any kind of issue that is not something that we're familiar with, we meet with. So if it's a personnel or a hiring issue, then we work with them to make sure that we're following those issues. So ADA compliance for issue. And so that's very much like I would say they're in our offices probably 3 times a week, talking to us because we have close to, I think, 420 staff people. With the facilities, we have the same team. They're part of it, and it is a hybrid solution where the facilities work with library staff. We talk about the programs that we want to offer and the types of spaces we need. And then the facilities talk to us about cost. They talk about design and give us options. So I think of it very much as a partnership, similar with the sheriff. Though we are independent, we work very much in concert with each other. Does that answer your question?
That's very helpful, Sean. With regard to payroll, does the county issue your payroll for you?
Yep. So up until 2 years ago, the county, the library used to have its own HR department. And what we did is we phased that out and joined 3 or 4 years ago with county. And we took our staff at that point and moved them to county. We did the same with facilities. We used to have our own facilities department, and we took those FTE and merged them into the facilities department because the efficiency is that we have a central controlling mechanism, and that we provide kind of clarity and alignment. And the best alignment we found was to take that staff and move them into the county offices. So we actually don't have any of those, and that includes back to payroll. Payroll is the third thing that we did. We had a payroll clerk. She retired, and we looked at it and said, because we only had one payroll clerk when she went on vacation, payroll was very difficult. The county has a very large payroll system. So again, we centralized it.
Yeah.
It's
She was real interested in what caused her to change her mind.
It's all right. No, that's fine. Was that a question or does that? Yeah. So the library has changed in the last, I would say, 4 years, I think.
And could you just address purchasing other than library materials? Is the county also doing that?
The county
working
is
with you?
The county is not. The county has a portion of paying it. The county also has the responsibility or role to assure that we're following those. So again, if purchase orders are over $50,000, we require 3 bids. If it's between $50,000 and $100,000 and it's a complex, like a piece of software, then it will be an RFP. We write it. We generally write it with our county partners, so we're reviewing it. Library legal may review it, and then if it's over $100,000, then the board has to approve it, as that's past my authorization authority. That goes through a process. We'll sign it, but it also goes to the finance. Finance reviews that, make sure that we're compliant with all laws. And if we're not, if we've missed something, and that hasn't happened in a long while, they'll flick it back. So it's nice to have a good checks and balance with that process. But those 2 things are integrated.
Other questions? Dawn?
You mentioned that there's, prior to COVID, there was 34,000 people that came in per week. How is that trending versus the past 5 years? And how do you see it, the population or the attendance at the library trending for the future?
We see trending, well, let me talk, pre-COVID were about 34,000. That has now, since we reopened all of our services on May 3rd, we are seeing door count at about 50%. We're waiting 6 months before we take any action to see if hesitancy to return back to the building is permanent, or as people become vaccinated and feel more comfortable not wearing masks and meeting, if we'll see those restored. On the other side, we saw an uptick in digital usage, I think went up about 30%. And then we canceled in-person programming, and that's going to come back in the fall. So story times, author visits. My feeling is, as the trend we were seeing was that door count was continuing to increase and a circulation was continuing to increase at about 3% a year. And I think that trend is going to continue. One of the things that's unique about Johnson County is that we read 15 books a year per capita, every man, woman, child in this county, which is way, way, way above the national average. Good question.
Mr. Guyana?
Thank you, Jimmy Gayona here. Question about since the merger of HR services, how has staffing or qualified staffing affected you, especially with the recent uptick of digital? And then on top of that, if we read so many books in Johnson County, I imagine it keeps going up. So it's a lot of hands.
Yeah, for us, it's been a tremendous benefit. By partnering with a larger department, we were able to understand some of the issues that they were facing, but we also had blind spots, particularly under certain areas that we were not fully compliant, and we're able to correct those. It's also helped with our training. It's just helped with feeling part of the county, that this is a partnership going forward. Overall, I feel like our staff, particularly at the management level, are much more informed about policy changes to law, just all the types of things that you have to be aware of when you're interviewing or when you're terminating an employee. These are probably the highest risks, and staff is trained and really tremendously supported by county HR.
Sean, if I may ask, we had the percentage in the budget of where your revenues come from. What is the total budget for the library for fiscal year 21?
I think it's right around 42 or 43 million.
And are there areas where there have there been any areas of friction where the relationship between the independent library board and the county has not been clear enough in the charter, and thereby causing friction or concerns or questions?
Not to my knowledge. If there are questions that come up just that need clarifying particularly around capital plans. But one of the things that I failed to mention was that annually the Board of County Commissioners meet with the library board. The library board also has a retreat, and that the county manager also has a liaison, which is with Joe Connor. So I can't think of any friction that may have occurred. Nothing has sprung to mind. That the goal is that when we look at the elected officials, the Board of County Commission, and their strategic objectives, the library is always looking to align, which is, we can't align with all of the initiatives, but there are some that is a natural fit. So again, when we're fighting issues, when we're fighting poverty or affordable housing, the library can often talk to that, particularly around, I talked with you at ULC about our race project KC. And so we talk about equality issues, and we're able to have those conversations at the library. I cannot remember Well, I do remember one. We did have some pottery displays that had swear words in them, and we had a number of our patrons concerned with that, and it did make concerned with the commission, but it really became a freedom of speech issue. And so the artist has the right to be, there's nothing illegal about being vulgar. And we did some mitigating steps by alerting people with signage about that. But you actually had to go, they had the swear words at the bottom of bowls. And so you had to actually be fairly proactive. That's the only one that I really remember.
We're next going to hear from the Parks and Rec Department, which is another quasi-independent agency, if you will. And both you and the Parks and Rec are quality of life amenities for the county. So can you speak at all to how you interact with Parks and Rec, and maybe they can speak to that when they get up here as well?
Always thought of it as a partnership together. It's the kind of mind-body experience. I think one of the unique partnerships we did with COVID and with the county parks and city parks is we give out books for summer reading. And we couldn't give those out in the buildings, but we did pop-up libraries and parks, and we did story walks. And so we would tell people about that, and that's the way they could sign up for summer reading. Why do we do summer reading? Because we just know that during that period, kids on average slide about a grade level if they don't read. Read is the one thing that they can do to mitigate that. And I think it's been a great partnership. A theater in the park, the Parks Department have invited us to do this. And again, with the Cultural and Heritage Center, we've had many events there and partnered with that space that I consider them great partners. Same mission. They take more of the outside in your body stuff. We take care more of your mind. Though they run a tremendous amount of programming for children in daycare, and also have, I think, a strategic initiative that's focused on education.
Mr. Peterson?
Sean, you've got your own dedicated mill levy, and yet the Board of Commissioners reviews your budget. Can you explain a little bit about how that works and how decisions get made about what gets spent on what?
Yep. So it's my understanding, and if I say something incorrect, please correct me. It's my understanding that the commission sets the mill, and that at that point it's for the library board to take those funds, and then they charged me with managing of them. What we have put in place, both for commissioners and for the library board, and we report to them monthly, is how those monies are being expended. So instead of doing quarterly reports, we do trimester reports on our strategic initiatives, where we show in dollars and in time how we're allocating staff time to these strategic initiatives. We also present our budget to the library board, to the BOCC annually, and then we are able to, in that form, cover a number of key performance indicators. So again, if we're looking to increase service in a certain area or in a certain type of technology, such as ebooks, we're able to share with the commission, are we meeting the outcomes that we predicted, and with the board, that monthly reporting. The other thing I failed to mention is at the board sends a liaison and a representative, and for us it's Commissioner Hanslick, and she sits not as a board member, but as a liaison, and a way to communicate what the BOCC is doing in their direction, but also for a chance for the board to share what the library is doing. And if there are any concerns, then they can be talked about then and adjusted.
Cynthia, this may be a question for you, but, or you too, Sean, when the county holds its public hearing on its annual budget, is the library mill levy budget part of that public hearing?
I think it is. It's open for public. There's a public comment. I attend those meetings and listen to what our constituents have to say. I go through the ETC citizen survey, particularly with a focus on libraries, and look at concerns such as, are they aware of the service? How often do they use it? But to be honest, I don't find a lot of citizens having problems with paying taxes for libraries. We've done a couple of studies with KU Edwards, which is funny, return on investment. And one of the big findings about, I think about 30% are willing to pay more taxes so someone else will get access to a library. And that was stunning.
Other questions? Anybody online? Chris, Dawn, Mike, or Brenda? Any questions? That's Don Roberts. If not, Sean, as we've told other speakers, there may be additional questions submitted by members of the commission in writing that Linda will get to you, and we'd look forward to your response to those. Otherwise, thank you very much. And if you can hang around, we may have questions at the end for all three of our presenters.
Thank you again. Thank you for the opportunity, everyone.
Our next presenter is the Parks and Rec. And come on up and we'll turn the floor over to you. Sean got us warmed up.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jeff Stewart, Executive Director for Johnson County Park and Recreation District. And I've been looking forward to visiting with you and introducing you to the many JCPRD services that are essential to our Johnson County citizens. So thank you for allowing me some time today. I brought some folks with me, and there's some others on Zoom here that I would like to just briefly introduce. Travis Buell, Deputy Director. Bill Mawson, Superintendent of Parks and Golf Courses. Rhonda Pollard, Superintendent of Recreation. Terry Anderson, Superintendent of Safety and Outdoor Education. Susan Mong, Superintendent of Culture. Fred Logan and Andy Logan, JCPRD Legal Counsel. I also want to thank you for giving your time to serve on the Charter Commission, and understanding that time is limited this evening. Please trust that we all stand ready to answer any follow-up questions that you may have or provide you additional information as you continue your work. I should also recognize that JCPRD's board chair, Leslie River-Ola, is also a member of your Charter Commission, and I'm sure that she too would be happy to provide you information and answer your questions as needed. So our purpose is to enrich the Johnson County community through excellence in parks, recreation, culture, education, and public service. And I'm really pleased to share with you at the last citizen survey conducted by Johnson County government that 90% of our residents feel that we're successful in our mission. As JCPRD continues to follow best practices to achieve our mission, we're even planning on an even brighter future. Our vision is to pursue innovation and stewardship to sustain and enrich a thriving park and recreation system that inspires play, culture, and education, leading to a healthy and fulfilling lives for all. Please know that this vision is front of mind during our efforts in planning, programming, maintaining, and operations. Per Kansas statutes, JCPRD is governed by a 7-member policymaking board of Park and Recreation Commissioners appointed by the Board of County Commissioners. In addition, a member of the BOCC is also selected by the county commissioners to serve on the JCPRD board in an ex officio capacity. All board members must be qualified voters and reside within Johnson County. Terms of office, like the library, we stagger these. They're 3-year terms so that at all times a majority of the board has experience being on the board. Each year on an annual basis, the board elects its own officers. The Park District was created by Kansas legislature in 1953, contingent upon a presentation of a petition signed by no less than 5,000 qualified electors. The Park District was formally established by legislature in 1955, originally called the Shawnee Mission Park District. The reason for that is the Park District's boundaries were that of the Shawnee Mission School District. Until 1967, when we added recreation programming into our business operations and the expansion of our borders to provide services throughout all of Johnson County. JCPRD continues to be the only special park district in the state of Kansas with its own comprehensive statutory governance. We have a very rich history, and we're thankful for the leaders and our organization through the years who their great foresight and their hard work have set the groundwork for the many successes that we enjoy today and certainly will tomorrow. So let's take just a minute to talk about how we've evolved. The next few slides better depict the foresight of our leaders by showing the growth of Johnson County from 1960 through 2020. The brown on the map here of Johnson County indicates plotted land, and the green indicates JCPRD park property. You can see how from the very beginning, JCPRD has been strategic to stay ahead of development in our efforts to preserve green space for parks. The Park District's first two parks continue to be of the most visited parks in all of Johnson County. That includes Antioch Park, who welcomes nearly 1 million visitors on an annual basis, as well as Shawnee Mission Park, that welcomes nearly 2 million visitors on an annual basis. Now you'll see on the map here where the large green image is within the map that Shawnee Mission Park was established when it was quote unquote way out there. So can you imagine what Shawnee Mission Park might look like today if our leaders at that time didn't have the foresight to capture that green space for us all to enjoy forever? The following slides show JCPRD's efforts to continue this practice as Johnson County continues to grow rapidly. Notice the added platted property by 1980. As Johnson County was experiencing increasing growth, JCPRD opened Thomas S. Stahl Memorial Park and Heritage Park. And while the property was acquired again in front of development, it is also understood and was at that time that development surrounding parks and trails is in large demand and of higher value. By 2000, many of the cities within Johnson County were exploding with growth. And noted by the asterisk on the image, JCPRD was aggressive in acquiring property, picking up land for future parks to include Kill Creek Park just south of DeSoto, Cedar Niles Park in West Olathe, Stillwell Community Park just on the south side of the Stillwell community, and Big Bull Creek Park between the cities of Gardner and Edgerton. In fact, a bond referendum was passed overwhelmingly by the Johnson County voters to purchase the Big Bull Creek Park land because our citizens truly know how important parks and green spaces are for the community. For many years, JCPRD's acquired park property had to remain closed to the public. Resources simply would not allow for initial phase development, nor for the maintenance of these future park sites. While we've made great progress over the last 20 years, it was in 2016 when the Board of County Commissioners provided a 0.75 mil increase that allowed us to open up many acres that have been closed to the public, waiting for future development. So we've been able to successfully, since that time, open thousands of acres so everyone in the community can enjoy these beautiful treasures. Trails have and continue to be a top priority for our citizens. And with the public's vote in favor in 1986, this led to a plan to connect a system of trails through 7 watersheds, which you can see on the map on the screen. JCPRD's trail system is now comprised of 136 plus miles of trails and growing. And we take great pride in working with other municipalities to connect their trail systems with ours. As I previously stated, in 1967, JCPRD expanded its services with the inclusion of recreation programming. Since that time, JCPRD has added a number of recreation and culture facilities listed on the screen. These facilities are owned and operated by JCPRD with the exception of a few. We have the Johnson County Arts and Heritage Center, the Roland Park Community Center, and the Shawnee Mission School District Aquatic Center, JCPRD does not own these properties, but are responsible for managing and operating them. So today, JCPRD owns and operates 25 recreation and culture facilities that program activities and events welcoming over 2 million participations on an annual basis. We also own and maintain 14 parks and 4 streamway parks totaling over 10,000 acres in Johnson County, much of which has been open to the community now. JCPRD serves over 10 million visitors and participations on an annual basis. Now that's a lot of people, and I like to put that to scale. So we're all familiar with the popularity of the Kansas City Chiefs now in Arrowhead Stadium. To serve the same number of people, the Kansas City Chiefs would have to sell out 16 plus seasons to serve the same number of people that we serve at JCPRD on an annual basis. I think that's very telling. And like the Kansas City Chiefs, we continue to gain in popularity. In fact, just last year in 2020, we had, during the height of the pandemic, we had nearly 1.8 million more visitors to our parks and trail system than we had the previous year. JCPRD's organizational structure is made up of 5 divisions as shown on the slide, with multiple specialized departments within each of those. The divisions are supported by just over 300 full-time staff professionals and approximately 1,500 part-time and seasonal employees. We also simply could not do it without the thousands and thousands of hours and numerous volunteers that help us each and every day. In fact, if you or someone you know is looking for a job or for something to do, please see me after we're done here this evening. JCPRD offers over 4,000 programs and events on an annual basis. We truly do try to have something for everyone. Listed on the slide are the departments that program these activities and events. And to highlight just a couple, JCPRD is the largest children's services provider in the state of Kansas. Our corporate and community wellness program offers the Kansas City Corporate Challenge program, which is the first, the largest, and we think the best corporate games in the nation. I would like to take a moment to recognize that JCPRD relies and proudly works with a number of partners to successfully provide the many services, certainly the Johnson County Library being one of them. We are able to serve 3,300 families on a daily basis through with our partnerships with the Johnson County school districts, 4 of them in fact, where we provide before and after school programming as well as many camps. Another example in our partnership is with the Shawnee Mission School District, where JCPRD manages and operates their new Shawnee Mission School District Aquatic Center pictured on the screen. We have a very positive relationship with Johnson County government that has allowed us to manage and program the Johnson County Arts and Heritage Center. And I truly hope that all of you have had the opportunity to enjoy that facility and the many cultural experiences that we offer there. We also work very closely with the Johnson County municipalities. JCPRD services look a little bit different from one city to the next. It just depends on what those needs may be. But just recently, we had a wonderful partnership with the City of Prairie Village and a private developer in the development of Meadowbrook Park. I hope that all of you have had the opportunity to check that out as well. This public-private partnership has drawn not only local appreciation, but also national attention. We certainly recognize it takes resources to provide the over 4,000 programs, events, and services that we offer at JCPRD. And our budget is made up of 3 funds as shown on the slide here. JCPRD is a separate taxing entity with a current mill levy of just under 3.1 mills, as shown on the black box at the top of the screen. You'll note on the summary that our funding breaks out among general fund, employee benefits fund, and enterprise funds. I would also especially like to call your attention to the bottom gold box on the chart here. Over 48% of our budget is funded through non-tax sources through our enterprise fund operations. So that's a lot of our recreational and culture and education opportunities where we charge fees for those services. This is unusually high, and we're a national leader in our enterprise fund operations. So I hope that you feel this represents an excellent return on your investment in JCPRD. In 2015, JCPRD engaged the citizens of Johnson County, and we collaborated with 62 stakeholder groups to develop a new strategic plan to guide us over the next 15 years. The priorities identified during this process include regional parks, trails and connectivity, recreation and culture resources, connecting with nature, stewardship, identity, and teamwork. And I'm pleased to share with you that we've made tremendous progress since that plan was accepted by our board. And as shown on the previous slide, the BOCC increased the JCPRD mill rate by 0.75 to fund approximately half of this strategic plan. Each year, the JCPRD Board of Park and Recreation Commissioners works with staff to review and update our 5-year capital improvement plan. The legacy plan, or our strategic plan, is the driving force behind the CIP. The pie chart shows here how our CIP expenditures are allocated over the next 5 years. And I think it's important to highlight this and share that while there's a lot of attention to some of the new development, new parks, new trails, new facilities, et cetera, that we have introduced to the community over recent years, we're also investing heavily, reinvesting, I should say, in our assets that our residents have enjoyed for many years. So this pie chart gives you an indication that it's roughly half and half in developing new and expanding and taking care of what we have. In addition to the legacy plan being only about 50% funded, JCPRD has identified a number of needs, some of which are only partially funded through the legacy plan or even identified in the legacy plan. And as shown or listed on this slide here, there are a number of master plans and studies that have been completed along with cost estimates for other improvements and developments. So as the Johnson County community continues to grow, and those numbers are quite staggering at our current rate, JCPRD services will continue to gain in popularity. So we need to make sure that we provide and have the additional resources necessary to accomplish many of these needs that have been identified. JCPRD continues to engage with the community to seek feedback and direction. And like the library, one of the ways that we do this is by participating in the citizen survey conducted by Johnson County government, which is typically done on an annual basis. Therefore, this allows us to track our progress and performance, as well as identify any areas that are important to our citizens of the community. And I think this slide is very telling if you look towards the top here. JCPRD services are second highest in priority according to our citizens, just behind Johnson County Emergency Medical. In fact, we tied with public health in the middle of a COVID-19 pandemic and what's the most important service to provide to our citizens. And I think that's extremely telling. But please know that your Park and Recreation District is not only about fun and leisure. We are a true economic driver for the community, and it's understood that as we're able to fund identified needs, the economic impacts will increase significantly. In fact, in 2015, JCPRD commissioned the Trust for Public Land to do an economic benefits study, demonstrating our value in dollars and cents. And you can see from this slide the breakdown that our economic value to the community at this point in time is nearly $100 million a year. So just to close here a little bit, I want to let you know that your Park and Recreation District is following best practices and is a national leader within the industry. In fact, we are fully accredited and have been since 1999. JCPRD was one of the first park and recreation agencies in the country to be fully accredited. And we, every 5 years, have achieved reaccreditation status. Most recently in 2019, when we passed 100% of all 151 accreditation standards. In 1995, JCPRD was recognized by the National Recreation and Park Association with the National Gold Medal Award. This award is our World Series, or our Super Bowl, if you will. It recognizes us as the best park and recreation agency in the entire country. And I'm pleased to share with you that in 2017, we were recognized with the Gold Medal Award again. So we're very proud of that. So with that, I want to thank you for your time and attention this afternoon. And I'd be happy to answer any questions or yield to others that are with me this evening to answer your questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeff. Questions from the commission?
This
Jane?
is Jane Dirks, and I wondered who is responsible for maintenance of the trails? Is that you or is it the individual cities? And then also a follow-up question in a different area is when like the Brook Ridge Golf Course is going away, do you ever get involved in using part of that area for expanding the recreational areas?
Okay. So the trails that are owned by Johnson County Park and Recreation District, we do maintain and improve those trails ourselves internally. Most of the trails that are owned and maintained by our municipalities or our partners with the cities, they're responsible for that. I say that there have been examples of us cooperating with them and providing some assistance, or even if it's financial assistance, whether that be for, typically that's more for development or extension connections of trails versus maintenance of it. But for JCPRD trails, we're responsible for our paved trails and maintaining those. We do work with a volunteer group, Urban Trail Co., on our single track trails. Just a tremendous group that helps us with the development and maintenance of those trails, which we have many miles of. And to your second question, as opportunities come up, I'll go back to Meadowbrook Park, for example. That was the old Meadowbrook Park and golf course. And so as things turn over, things change. We often engage in conversation and what possibilities there may be in JCPRD providing a service or an improvement, or working with a municipality or others. So thank you for your questions.
Randy Hutchins. Can you tell us how many park police we have and what their unique skill set that sets them apart from the current sheriff's department?
Great question. We have been adding some park police officers here recently with the expansion of our park system. In fact, over the last 4 years, we've added over 3,000 acres of park ground that are available to the community. So we've completed a safety plan that includes addressing our park police force. So we have been through the budget process requesting 4 park police officer positions on an annual basis for 6 years. And so we're about in the middle of that process right now. I believe when we started that 2 years ago, we were in the neighborhood of 28 to 30 officers. Keeping in mind, these are fully commissioned officers. They go to the same academy that your municipal officers go to as well. And it is a 24/7 operation. So it does take a number of officers to be able to work through patrol.
And can you share with us how you feel they're differentiated from the current sheriff's department?
Sure. So their focus is within JCPRD parks and facilities and services and so forth. So in many aspects, they are also doing patrol, but they are also engaging with our visitors. Again, 10 million visitors and participations each and every year. While a lot of those are repeat customers, so to speak, where our parks and facilities are very active. Each of our officers are also required to work with our outdoor education program. So they do a lot of interpretive programs. So that is a unique feature and part of what we were recognized with on the Gold Medal Award nationally. Thank you for your questions.
Mayor Swak?
Mr. Stewart, I'd like you to address the issue I raised with the director of the library system. You have your own administrative division and you are responsible for comporting with certain policies of the BOCC. So can you explain exactly what you're doing in-house and what things you're doing in coordination with the county managers, various divisions for purchasing, HR, risk management?
Absolutely. Thank you for your question. JCPRD is in accord with county policies, and that's per charter. So as county government releases policies, procedures, etc., JCPRD will evaluate and review all of those. If there are any cases where we need to be different than county policy, then that requires our Board of Park and Recreation Commissioners to approve that, whether that be for finance, IT policies, HR policies, etc. If there are no changes other than the standard changes, being county manager to JCPRD executive director, for example, things of that nature, then we could just go ahead and adopt those policies as an organization. We do have our own administrative services division. So to oversummarize, we're almost our own municipality, if you will. We do have our own finance department, our own HR department, planning and development, IT, and so we do operate in that manner. The connection or the bridge with Johnson County government is that the Board of County Commissioners approve our final approval of our budget on an annual basis, and they do appoint our Board of Park and Recreation Commissioners.
Mayor Michelson. Thanks, Jeff. Great presentation, and Sean as well. Very educational. Appreciate it. My question is this, is there any aspect of Johnson County government, including but not limited to the charter, that presents challenges for you in fulfilling your mission, or opportunities you see for structural improvement that would make that easier or more efficient for you to fulfill your vision, your mission?
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate your question. And in regards to the charter itself, JCPRD does not have any recommendations for your consideration to change. We have a great relationship with Johnson County government and work very closely with the county manager's office in communication and looking for ways that we can have partnerships. So we don't have any concerns in that regard. Similar to what Sean highlighted, when you're working with two governing bodies for things such as budget and whatnot, that can slow down the process a little bit, right? I might suggest actually we just start the process sooner. So we typically in our budget process will prepare that in January and February at the staff level, then go to our Board of Park and Recreation Commissioners, who will approve it preliminarily, and then we go through the process with the Board of County Commissioners, and then bring it back to our board for final approval once they approve. So, but no suggestions from JCPRD for any kind of changes to the charter per se in regards to how it works with Johnson County Park and Recreation District. Thank you.
Other questions from members of the commission? Oh, Mr. House.
Thanks, Jeff. And I went to the Great American Camp Out with my family and saw you on stage.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Mama Mia, you did a great job. Good job throwing the Frisbees to the crowd. I'm just wondering, in terms of additional needs and planning, have we, in your view, purchased all the big pieces of land we need for parks going into the future? Or is that something that changes or you balance as we get different population growth in different areas?
Excellent question. I think our focus right now is mostly on acquiring additional property to expand our trail system, our Streamway Park system. So that's of top priority as far as land acquisition is concerned. To purchase very large tracts of land, Big Bull Creek Park is just over 2,000 acres in size. Shawnee Mission Park, roughly 1,600 acres in size. We don't have any focus at this point in time for that, but I think like we have since the beginning, we want to continue to really be strategic in identifying green space that we may want to preserve for Johnson County and the citizens as we continue to grow rapidly. Thank you, sir.
Jeff, how do you coordinate with cities who are also preserving streamway and making their own parks? How do you coordinate to determine whether the green space is in the place where people need it?
So we take great pride in our collaborative relationships with the municipalities. There are a number of them that are focused on streamway park development, trail extensions, connectivity, and so forth. As I mentioned previously, there's some examples of us participating with them to assist with that development. We've got one on the drawing board right now with the city of Olathe, connecting Lake Olathe with Cedar Lake, which will also tie into Cedar Niles Park. So we do communicate with them, and we participate on their master planning process or strategic planning processes in many cases. We also even take the lead in developing the maps for Johnson County that show all of our streamway trails and park trails and so forth. So those lines of communication are open, and we try to assist where we can.
Same question I asked for the library. Are there areas you can think of where there have been any areas of friction or confusion or ambiguity between the Parks and Rec Board and the County Commission that are the result of the current home rule charter?
No, sir.
Other questions? Anybody online? Mike, Chris,
No,
Dawn, or Brenda?
I'm good, but we can hear everybody really well. Thank you so much for that.
Great. I should have asked that earlier. Thank you for that clarification. Jeff, thank you. If you'll hang around with your team, we may have questions at the end.
Very good, sir. Thank you all very much, and we hope to see you in a park or a recreation facility or a culture facility later this evening.
Okay, our next presenter will be Bo Boisert of the County Appraiser's Office. I told Bo this morning that he is the most popular guy in our survey, with 18 people definitely wanting to see him. And he'll be out in the lobby later for individual appeals.
The county appraiser in any county is the most popular and unpopular person in reality. So that's just the way it works because of what we do for a living. My name is Bo Bobet. I'm the county appraiser. I've been here for a year and 8 months. I just been reappointed for another 4 years. And we're going to have a little conversation about what does my office do and where we're at and what our future looks like.
Excuse me, could you use the microphone and speak up just a little bit more?
Is that better? Okay. So first of all, let's go back one. Well, we'll start right there. So by law 17, Arizona Statute 79 or Kansas Statute 79, 14, 16 talks about the duties of the appraiser. And it's in summary is very simple. We locate the properties. We identify what type of property it is. We establish a value to the property. And then we defend the property values that we've established if they make sense through the appeal process. That is in summary what our duties are in order for the county appraiser. In that aspect, however, come on, there it is. It's moving around a lot here. Here we go. The dual responsibility. I have a unique situation. I actually have to be approved and certified by the Kansas Department of Revenue in order to hold the position as a county appraiser. So I have to be certified in all aspects of appraisal. But then I'm actually hired by the Board of Commissioners, County Commissioners. So I'm actually somewhat of a contract employee in that aspect. So I'm kind of unique in that aspect. So my responsibility really is to follow the Kansas Constitution and statutes as it relates to valuation of the properties and managing the sales ratio study and meeting all the criteria and meeting all the deadlines. But then I answer to the Board of Commissioners as it relates to how operating the office as a county department. So that's kind of what makes my job a little bit unique and to most of the other jobs within the county is I, in some aspects, have two bosses. So it depends on what part of the job we're talking about at the time. Yes.
There is this separate sheet that is with all of your documents, that is replacing page 3 and 4.
Yeah, that's right. We made some changes based on some last minute requests about what you were looking for from your questions. So sorry about that.
There should be one.
It's a two-sided sheet, should be at your location. If you don't have it, we'll get you one at the end.
Apologize, Bo, let me interrupt a minute. We just received notice Leslie needs to be admitted to the meeting, please.
Okay, Leslie is admitted. Sorry for the interruption, Bo.
That's okay. Other parts of the accountability and duties for myself is accountability to the department, like I said, in the county. So in running the office, the job really relates to the hiring of staff, the training of staff, overseeing the budget that's assigned to our particular department, long-term planning, and compliance with county policies and procedures as it relates to the staffing part of our business. So what is it? How do we appraise property? Well, by state law, the property is appraised by what we call the fair market value. Fair market value in a summary form is a knowing buyer and a knowing seller coming to a decision on the value of property based on it being in the open market. So that means that both of the buyer and the seller are looking to sell and to buy a property in the open market with options, whether who the buyer would be to sell to or who the buyer is buying from. So that aspect is a lot different. What doesn't count as an arm's length transaction or fair market is a father selling to a son or to a daughter. Those are not typically looked at as actually fair market sales because there's a relationship attached to that is not in the open market. So. Yeah. Oh, we did. How is appraisal calculated? Well, the key aspects of figuring out the values of properties is we look at the market, we look at the sales of the properties, we look at the size of the property, we look at the land characteristics of the property, we look at the improvements that are on the property, whether it's good quality, average quality, poor quality. We look at all those different aspects of the components that are part of that property. Most people look at a property, especially residential, they see a house and land. We're looking at not just the land, but we're looking at the pieces that make up the land. Is it level? Does it have any type of topography issues on the property? Is there a creek? Is it adjacent to a road? Those type of things is what we look at when we're doing an evaluation. On the residence or the commercial property, we're looking at the square footage, how it's constructed, when it was constructed, those type of components. So when we're looking to calculate a value, we're looking at sales and we're breaking all those components down and establishing a value for each of those components so that we can then apply those values of those components to the other properties that didn't sell. So all the properties are valued similarly for every year. So it's called mass appraisal instead of a fee appraisal. You guys are used to a fee appraisal when you refinance your house or you go to purchase a house and you get an appraiser goes out and does that appraisal. Well, we're doing that same type of appraisal work, but we're doing it on a mass scale. We're doing hundreds and thousands of properties in a market area that is defined within our system. And then establishing the market value, we're looking at, again, the sales comparison approach. That's what I just talked about. That's the sales of properties, applying the different characteristics and determining an evaluation for that. Another approach that we use is called the cost approach. Cost approach is used a lot on new construction properties where you're looking at the cost to build that and the labor and the materials. And then you're applying a land value underneath that particular cost value that you've calculated by one of the entities that actually creates those cost manuals for us. And our cost manual is about this thick, it's about this wide, and about this tall. It's a pretty thick book because it covers just about every type of business or building that could actually be built out there. And then we put a land value underneath it that we get from the actual market. And that creates what we call the cost approach. And then on the last one is the income approach. You see this a lot with commercial properties that are leased or rented out, because you have an income that's attached to the property. And so that income is what we call a future benefit. If I buy a property and it's being leased, and it's an office building and it's being leased to another business, and they're going to lease it for 20 years, there's an estimated income I'm going to get for every year that they're there under a contract. So what that income approach does is it takes that income and then capitalizes it out for 20 years, and it determines what the current value is of it every year. And that value will adjust every year based on what the income information is out there. And then the sales comparison approach, again, these are some of the key aspects of what we look at. I mentioned some of the valuation date. We value every property by January 1 of every given year. Time adjustment. So if the sale happened in June of last summer and we're looking at January of this year, we would then time adjust the sale to reflect that date. So all the values are set as if it was sold on January 1. Property characteristics, I talked a little bit about that already. Finance, of course, there's many different ways to finance a purchase of a home or a property. So that's looked at as well in the formula determining the value. And then conditions of the sale. Was it a short sale? Was it a distressed sale where somebody had passed away? The family just wants to unload the building and the home because they don't want to live in Kansas. I don't know why they wouldn't, but they're not living in Kansas until they want to sell it off to get the income off of the property. And then, of course, the time on the market. Was it on the market for 10 days, 2 weeks, 2 months, 6 months? In Johnson County, very little stays on the market more than a couple of days. So, and then, of course, arm's length transaction. That was what we talked about before. What is the market? What is market value? Then the cost approach, we talked a little bit about that, but these are some of the key components to that. Replacement cost new, we take that building and we basically rebuild it as if it was brand new that day on the same type of material. So if it's built out of wood, then we have that valuation. If it's built out of concrete, it's that valuation. We rebuild it, and then we will depreciate that cost based on how many years it's existed. Every building has a lifespan. Residential properties is usually 30 to 45 years, depending on the type of construction. Commercial properties is usually anywhere from 30 to 50 years, depending on the quality of construction. So if you built a house in 2000 and you sold it in 2010, there's 10 years of life that's already been on that property. If the person has done nothing to the property, there's now depreciation. So the value of the house is now different than it would be if it was brand new in 2000 when it was built. Then construction age, effective age, depreciation, is physical deterioration and obsolescence. And then actually what components were used. It's a lot cheaper to build one type of structure than it is to build another. And then, of course, market land value is then applied to that cost value to give you your value to the property. The income approach, again, we talked about that, is mostly like commercial properties. That's called the principle of anticipation. As I mentioned, it's a 20-year lease. How much money will I get out of a 20-year lease for the property? And so that's the anticipation value of it. So that's the principle that we use. We then have a formula that says value is equal to income times a factor. That factor can be sale price, it could be gross income, it could be the net income of the property, it could be a number of factors, but we use a factor to that in order to come up with the value. And then compare subject property to the market. After we evaluate something on cost, we go to the market to see how close we are to similar type properties that have sold. We should be within about a 10 to 8% value range of those costs if our cost number is correct. And then expenses to operate the building. Obviously, you can take those values out because if I'm leasing the property, I've also got expenses to go with that, right? So those are taken out of the formula. Then attribute the property and not a business. A lot of times people think we're valuing the business. We're not. We're valuing the lease of the improvements and of the land not of the actual business that's in the building or the structure. Here's what our timeline looks like. So for us on January 1, that's our valuation date. So at that point in time, we're establishing what our value is going to look like. Before March 1, we mail out our notices to each of the property owner as to what we think the new value is from our determination of developing the values on one of those three approaches. The property owners then have 30 days to file an appeal. We then work the appeals on an informal level. We have to have our informal levels done by May 15th. So we have a very short window to mail out, do the appeal process, and get out decisions. And then on May 20th, we mail out all of our decisions. And then on June 1st, I certify the roll as close to accuracy as it will be from the appeal season being over. And then that is handed over to the treasurer and the taxation departments to deal with. And then they work on the tax levy and that part of the process for the mill rates. Some of our challenges, many of you have probably heard about the big box issues that are out there, and the number of them with the big stores like Walmart and those. We are at the Court of Appeals right now. We've had our oral arguments, and we're waiting for a decision on this particular theory. Some property owners wanted to use the theory that every property should be valued as commercially, should be valued as if it's vacant, not while it's being used, but what it will look like at the end of the term of its use. Well, that could be 50 years. There's not going to be a whole lot of value left in 50 years on a property. So that's not a appraisal methodology. So we're arguing that that has to change, that it's actually based on what it looks like today and how it's being operated today. That hopefully we'll get a decision this fall on that one. Some other challenges for us is, of course, statutory changes. Every year the legislature meets and they get quite a few legislative bills out there to decide. We usually end up with 10 or 15 bills that could affect our work. And so myself and a number of other appraisers from around the state usually end up at the legislature trying to explain what that bill will and will not do. Maury's laughing because he knows what it's like because he's up there quite a bit too for other issues. But we're trying to make sure what they make decisions on makes sense and they don't violate the concept of fair and equitable values for property tax purposes. Another thing is high turnover. In my office right now, between now and about 5 years, I've got probably 11 to 12 people who are open for retirement. So every government office goes through this cycles. My cycles just get ready to come up. And so one of our things that we're working on now is how do we prepare for those retirements when they happen? How do we get some of that head knowledge that they have now and put it down and get it transferred to the people who are going to be standing behind to keep the work going so that we can have continuity going forward. So we're always working on processes where we can do some of that transfer of information. Publish court decisions. The court can make a decision like the Court of Appeals, and if they make it a written decision, then we have to follow it. So like on the big box decision, if it goes south for us and they make it a written decision, we will then be forced to use that methodology going forward. So we work really hard to try to make sure we're defending the things that we should be defending to make everything fair for everyone. And then a lack of creativity and ability. It's easy to get compliant and complacent with what you're doing and not look for the future. And we're trying really hard not to do that. And matter of fact, right now, we are 2/4 of the way through a new reorganization plan. I brought in a plan that I've used in other places. We're actually going to have all of our appraisers trained and certified to do residential, land, and commercial properties and get away from specialization where they only know how to do one property type so that we can go do the work wherever the work is needed. Some years we have more residential work to do. Other years we have more commercial work to do. So we're actually reorganizing our office and starting a training plan to get all of our appraisers up to speed so they all can handle any type of property going forward. Investment technology. I know the county's not going to allow me to hire another 30 people to get the work done. So we're having to invest in technology to make up for the manpower through technology that we're able to get our work done. And we're pretty good at that. We use GIS mapping. We use a Orion camera system for our creating a lot of our reports and our reviews. And so we are doing a good job in that area, but we can always do better. And then standardizing our remote work. We're actually developing as part of this reorganization, remote work. Our staff will be going out with actual laptops or handhelds. They will be doing their work in the field instead of going to the field, measuring a house, writing it all down, coming back to the office, then redrawing it into Apex, which is a drawing program, and then entering all the data in the system. They can do that in the driveway or on the street at the house while they're there, and then download that data directly to us via the internet. So we're in the process of testing that model right now. We're 2 weeks into it, and so far it's been going pretty good. And then continuing to improve communication and with the public as well as government entities. One of the reasons I think I was asked to come here was because my career has always been very strong in meeting with the public and talking to the public. I believe in going out and doing presentations and meeting with groups to find out what they see and how they feel about what my office does. I know from 25 years plus of being in this business that the appraiser's office is not always the most popular entity. And that's okay. The job still has to get done, but let's get it done right and let the public know, because I've told this to my staff in 2 different counties before coming here, and this staff has heard too. I believe that we work for the public. You pay our bill, we work for you. And so my job is to be a part of the community and to be involved in interacting with the community. So that is another thing that we're now working on. Unfortunately, the pandemic did not help in my plans for that. It's put everything back about a year, but we're now moving forward to create opportunities to have those meetings. And before I was here, I was in a meeting with a number of businessmen from Overland Park who had invited me to talk to them about the appraisal. And with that, I believe I'm open for questions.
Thank you, Bo. Questions, Ms. Costin?
Thank you for being here and thank you for your presentation and for the work you do for our county. I'm just curious, how will appraisals be affected by the spike in lumber prices this year? As we think about new construction, that certainly has some implications. And it was just an anomaly based on the supply chain that was disrupted. So can you speak a little bit about how those kinds of anomalies affect the process?
What usually happens is the market will go up a little bit when that happens. The houses cost obviously will go up. The developers are still going to want to make their money on that house. And so what you'll see is a spike for that year. And then when the actual inventory is available and the materials are available, you will see that spike go back down. So one thing about the appraisal world that's interesting is we are always flowing and we're following whatever's going on in the market. So some areas may see a little bit of an increase this year because of those particular issues. One of the biggest issues in this county is this is a highly demandable county. Everybody wants to move here. They live in this area for Kansas City. And so you are unique compared to the other counties around you in that your demand for property and homes here is much higher than anywhere else, and you don't have the inventory to help that. Well, the biggest issue for market is supply and demand. And there's an equilibrium of that supply line and that demand line. And right now you're sitting at, we're sitting at a very high demand and very little supply. So what that does is that puts the market in the hands of the sellers. They can say, I want $100,000, and they know they're actually going to sell it for $130,000 because they're going to have multiple buyers, because there's more buyers than there are sellers, and they're going to get a price more than they're even asking for. And so to your question is, you will see it go up, but it'll then stabilize and come back down maybe next year, or maybe the year after.
Senator Denny.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for your presentation tonight. Is it my understanding that you are hired directly by the chair of the commission and the rest of the commissioners do not take a vote on your employment?
No, they all voted on my reappointment, and they both all voted on my actual appointment originally when I came here.
Right, so that would be reflected in the minutes if there was a board vote.
Yes.
On your employment.
Matter of fact, the one I just got reappointed on, which is in April, I just mailed a copy of that to the Department of Revenue because they needed it for their records to show that I had been officially hired.
Right, and then you mentioned about the dark store theory, and
Yes.
that is at the Court of Appeals.
Yes, and we had our oral arguments before the Court of Appeals last week, and we're waiting for that decision. Court of Appeals usually takes anywhere from 60 to 90 days. It might take a little bit longer, so we're anticipating sometime this fall to get an answer.
And it appears that you support the county's position on taxing those box stores.
I support the fact that those stores should be valued on the cost approach, the income approach, or the sales approach, and not the dark store theory. Yes.
So early in your presentation, you said that you would follow the statutes and the Constitution.
Yes.
I think the law is pretty clear that the big stores that are built to suite are fee simple and the briefcase is pretty solid. So I'm curious why you're taking that position.
Because the courts haven't decided, and there is a question in my mind as it relates to what their basis of that is. If you look in any appraisal manual and any appraisal book, there is nowhere where the dark store theory is used as a methodology for valuation. And I've asked many people in this industry, if you own a business, are you going to accept a dark store theory of value in order to refinance your property? I have not had one property owner in the commercial realm yet come to me and say they would be willing to do that. The reason why is because it drops the value way below what's really there. A bank would be really questionable as to whether or not they'd give money for it. That's my reason for it. But if I have to follow it, I will.
Other questions? Mr. Peterson and then Randy.
In light of business changes that are occurring from COVID, what's your prospect for commercial property going forward and what the tax base is likely to be as a result of that?
For this year, 2021, we had a significant number of the commercial properties went down in value because there was a lot of vacancy. There was no income for a lot of the structures. And so we did see some significant drops. Some of those businesses are now starting to show positive signs again, not all of them. And kind of like to I can't remember see her name from here. Joy's question, it's going to go down and then it's going to go back up. You're going to have that stabilization. One of the things that will happen in the commercial realm is the big question: are companies going to go back to a big office, or are they going to work from home? That's the unknown right now. And if that happens, then you're going to see those buildings become restructured into some other type of use. They may sit vacant for a while, but there's still a cost value to that property, even if it sits vacant. You still have stone structure, you still have a parking lot, you still have windows, you still have a building that's usable. It's just going to have a reduced value based on its lack of use for now. So we just don't know what that looks like yet. But that's a good question. And everybody's asking me that same question wherever I go.
Mr. Hutchins?
Randy Hutchins, first, I very much appreciate the fact that you stated you do in fact work for the people, so appreciate hearing that. Along those lines, I know there's been a lot of frustration in the community when they've seen a large spike in their taxes. You are not an elected official, so they can't reach out directly to you because you aren't accountable directly to them.
Right.
So they've reached out to their county commissioner, only for the county commissioner to reach out to your office and be told that by law, they cannot have those type of conversations with you.
Right.
So again, you are not an elected official or directly accountable to the people. My question is, who does perform your evaluation, and what are the criteria of which you pass or fail your criteria set forth in your evaluation?
That's a good question because it is unique. I actually have two criteria. The primary criteria, which is the Department of Revenue, I have what they call a report card. And part of that report card is making sure that the values are what they call within the sales ratio study of the actual market. So we'll take residential because that's the easiest one to explain first. In residential, let's say we looked at all the residential properties in a market area. And in that market area, we say that the average residential home based on all the sales is $300,000. $50 a square foot. We'll just throw that out there. In order for me to make the statutory requirements of the sales being equitable, there's what we call a bell curve statistic. So on a bell curve, you have your bell curve. In the middle of that bell curve is what we call the average. So that's 300,000 right there. In order to be within 90% accuracy, which is the minimum I can have for my position, I have to have 85% of all the other properties within 2 standard deviations of that bell curve. So as the bell curve starts to go down, about right here, drop it, all those sales fit in there. If 15% of the sales can either be down below or a high above that statistical analysis. And our office has averaged between 92 and 96% accuracy for the last 10 years. That's the biggest one for me from them. From the county's perspective, I still get evaluated as a manager leading a staff of county employees as it relates to following policy, the accuracy of our work, the compliance with dealing with the public perception. So I get 2 grade cards every year. So that's kind of how that works.
Thank you. And just follow-up question, have you, in your career, have you worked in an office that was, the auditor was, or appraiser was an elected official?
I worked in Maricopa County where I came from. My boss was an elected official, yes, the county assessor. He was a politician.
Can you share your experience in that regard?
Well, I will tell you this. They're politicians. They are not appraisers. My job in Maricopa County was the county appraiser. I was the one that had to be certified, like here in Kansas, to do the appraisal work in order to have the job. And my job was like it is here, is to make sure that the office is compliant with whatever the statutory requirements are. And yes, there was a lot of political pressure because I'm working directly for an elected official. But I will tell you, if you were to check my history, we still were compliant and we met the laws, and I still met with the public on a regular basis. And I would explain, if I can't do something, I'll explain to you why I can't do it.
Thank you for taking the tough questions.
Oh, no problem.
We're going to go with Mayor Boehm first and then Mayor Michelson, or, okay. Oh, you didn't? Okay, the mic was in front of you. Mayor Boehm and then Jimmy Guyana. Jimmy, do you want to go ahead and then we'll
Thank
come
you.
back to Mike?
Thanks, Chair. Jimmy Gaona here. Appreciate your presentation. I was looking here at the 10-year plan. You have reorganization in here, and we're doing this for 10 years. So, I mean, could you give us 1 or 2 items that you would really like us to consider when we think about this homeroom charter in your department itself?
I think the biggest thing for me is just the support it takes to get this job done. It's a difficult job. My budget's $4.3 million. 90% of that budget is actually just for employees and benefits. I have a very small percentage to work with for continuing education, which is an issue for us because we have to be certified. If we want somebody to go to court and be an expert witness, they've got to be like me, an actual registered mass appraiser with the state to be recognized as a professional to do that particular court work. That's our biggest issue is we struggle with the money to do our education some years. It's just, that's our biggest issue because we need to be educated. We need to be up on what's new and what's being utilized for this industry. So that would be our biggest need.
In a follow-up, if that idea was the continuing education to gain information, can you show the value or department show the value back to the community?
The more training we get, the better we get at doing our evaluations, the better and the tighter the values will be in a neighborhood or or market area, the better trained the staff is, the better they are to answer questions to the public. Because that's one I find I get calls on, not a regular basis, but I get calls once in a while where they said somebody in my office made a comment to them and they didn't think it sounded right. And they were correct. And we need to have a conversation about what was the correct answer. Thank you. You're welcome. Thanks, Chair.
I may have missed it, but how many full-time equivalents do you have?
I have 79 actual employees. We used to be over 100, but with some changes that have occurred in the statutes and with adjusting some of our become more technically savvy, we've been able to reduce that number. And also personal property was a big one that we lost a number of employees because in June of 2016, all new personal property that's brought into this county or bought or used by a business is no longer taxed. So a big chunk of what we used to deal with for work went away. So that took away about 15 employees. So, and that number is going to be going down every year because now we're only taxing things that are older than June of 2016. And those of you in business know that personal property doesn't last forever. It's going to be down to almost nothing here in a few years. And it is a very small piece of the overall puzzle, the value, even today. We will be at $100 billion in value next year. We had 95 billion this year in this county. That puts us in a very elite group of counties across the country that have $1 billion worth of value, real property value in their county. So just in reference as to where we're at.
One thing, if you're interested in this, the appraiser does an annual report, including trends, showing how much of the property valuation in the county is residential, how much of it's commercial, industrial. It's very enlightening, especially if you look at it over the years. It has shifted to residential significantly from 15 or 20 years ago. Is Mayor Boehm available?
Sorry about that. Thanks, Greg. I was having technology issues and I kept unmuting myself to try to get your attention and then I couldn't find the button to unmute. So, Bo, a quick question. Go back to DART story theory, if you would. Typical office has a per square foot lease they sign annually and it's some number. It's pretty straightforward. Right. Retail, on the other hand, may have just a square footage lease. They may have a percentage rent increase or a percentage sales number in there as well. Tell me the impacts of that on DART store. I mean, in my mind, the office buildings, well, they might not have had people in them the last year. The leases were still in place. So those values shouldn't have had an immediate impact until people resize or back off or become delinquent or whatever. Retail, frankly, surged. So if we use the percentage rent in that example, they're going to have a significant increase in value potentially of the lease stream or the income stream, as opposed to the replacement cost or et cetera. So talk to me about that a little bit. I don't think everyone understands DART store and the valuation of the income stream is what's really important in those cases where there is an income stream to evaluate as opposed to cost approach or an income approach.
That's true, but right now the dark stores are all by the big boxes. Those are owner occupied properties. There is no lease with them. So that's why they're arguing that when Walmart is done with that property, they're going to leave. And now that property is worth a lot less because Walmart's gone. But until Walmart is gone and there's now somebody coming back in, you really don't know what that value is going to be. But they want us to think it's going to go down significantly. They're talking, they want 40% reductions on their properties using that theory. And that's what makes that theory dangerous. Because first of all, it's a theory. You have no facts to back it up that it's actually going to happen. If you have an actual lease in place and you're leasing the property, that is true, then you have a true income approach because there's a lease there. These are the properties that don't have leases that they're actually pushing the hardest on this particular theory.
In which case, many times the retailer left and has a lease in place that will not allow them to lease to a competitor, which puts your hands or ties your hands on it becoming not dark or the community.
Yeah, when Walmart leaves, they don't want a target to come into that spot. That's part of the deal. And most of those leases do have restrictions for when they leave, the next one coming in can't be a competitor. That's
Right.
but most of the public doesn't know that or understand that because we don't usually get to see the leases.
I'm going to try to mute now and hopefully it'll work.
Okay. Thank you for your question.
Other questions for the county appraiser? If I don't see any, I don't hear any from the online. So Bo, thank you. We have,
Thank you.
thank you, 9 minutes left. Before I ask if there are other questions for any of our three presenters, our next meeting is going to be virtual because this room is unavailable. It will be only virtual. We have 4 presenters next time, 4 presenters the following meeting, the first meeting or the second meeting in July. Then we will hear from our current county commissioners. So we need your topics, your questions for them. If we can get those sooner rather than later and get those to the commissioners so they can address those in our first meeting in August. Second meeting in August would be former county managers and current county manager back now that we know more than we did when Penny first presented. I know this has been a long slog, but we're almost through County Government 101 and into the more substantive part of what we're to do. So again, reread the county charter in light of what we've learned so far. Get us questions that you want the current county commissioners to answer, or I guess in that light, the former county managers to answer, and start thinking about what amendments you would want to propose. And we will get a format out to you so you can submit those to Linda. With that, are there any other questions for today, or do I get to let you out of class early on this university campus? One of the top 2 universities in Kansas. If not, I'd take a motion to adjourn. Jimmy Gayano moves to adjourn and Mayor Michelson seconds. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. That motion carries without opposition. Thank you all for coming again.
Thanks, Greg.